Hi, I am Hudson Meeks and I am a developer in the customer engineering team at BMC Software. This how-to video is part 3 and the last video in a video series covering analysis of event filtering criteria for patrol event propagation in the BMC ProactiveNet Performance Management version 9.0 environment. This video series assumes you have already viewed the 3-part video series named BPPM, Patrol Event Propagation and Management. If you have not watched that video series or if you have not watched part 1 and part 2 of this series, you should stop and watch those videos before proceeding. The video series named BPPM, Patrol Event Propagation and Management covered the basics that we have built on in this series and that are listed on this slide. In part 1 of this video series, we discussed the BPPM components involved, including the patrol console. We also described the analysis process listed here. The key step in the analysis is to leverage the patrol console to determine the proper patrol event catalog and patrol event class for the events you are working with. So far, we have seen how to create event inclusion filters for standard events and events coming from the Event Management KM. In certain cases, the patrol KMs might provide event data in different ways. It is critical to understand these capabilities and where they exist so that you can choose the method that best meets your needs. Event data from the Windows operating system event logs is one such example. By configuring the Windows KM appropriately and analyzing test events from the Windows event logs in the patrol console, we will determine the proper patrol event catalog and patrol event class to define in the filter rules so that we send Windows event log entries as patrol events into the BPPM event processing cell. Let's see how that is done in the product. As you can see, there are no events from patrol agents in this event management cell here in the BPPM operator GUI. Basic configuration, including connectivity from the patrol agents, has already been configured. Rules to filter out all events from the patrol standard event catalog have also been applied to the agent. So our next step is to configure the patrol monitoring of the Windows operating system to monitor Windows event logs. If we expand the Windows operating system KM here, go down to Windows Events, right-click on that, choose KM Commands, we can enable and disable Windows event log monitoring here. For purposes of this training session, I'm just going to pick the system event log. So we'll choose it and click Apply, and you'll now see that it's in the monitored list. If I go ahead and close that, my next step is to right-click on Windows Events again, choose KM Commands again, and configure what we've already set up. By configuration at this point, what I'm really referring to is creating a filter. I only want to pick up certain events out of the Windows event log and not all events. Picking all of the events would send a tremendous amount of noise upstream to the event management cell. So I'll click on Create Filter here. We choose the event log that we've already chosen to monitor. The next step is to give this guy some kind of a name and description. I'm just going to use the word test here in both cases. I do want to notify patrol immediately when an event matches the filter criteria. We'll click on Source here, and the source that I want to choose is the Services Control Manager. How do I know that? I know that by having analyzed the events that are in the Windows event log that I actually care about. Again, that's by me looking within the Windows Event Manager in the operating system, not in Patrol, to pick and choose the kind of information that I want to key off of. And in this case, I just want the source to be the Service Control Manager and no other sources. You could pick any of these other sources that you might care about, and obviously knowing what source to pick is a matter of knowing what events you want to trigger off of that are in the Windows event logs. I'm going to disable case sensitivity selection there because I don't care what the case is. Click OK. The event type, that will be either critical, error, warning, or information is fine. I'm not going to choose any other information here on that. Event ID, the defaults here is good enough for me, so I'm going to leave that. Event handling, I want to go ahead and annotate the graph. This isn't actually required for us to pick up the event, but it is something that I would like to do within the context of Patrol. We could write the event details to a text parameter. We could use event details for recovery actions if we wanted to as well. One key thing that I want to set here is for this to remain an alarm until the operator actually acknowledges that there's a problem. So we'll go ahead and click OK on that, and then click Finish. And at this point, we get a listing of what our filter criteria actually looks like, and I'm just going to go ahead and scroll all the way down here and click Yes. And now that filter has been applied for monitoring events out of the Windows System Event Log. We'll go ahead and click Done at this point. And now there's one more step, and this is an interesting step. If we right-click on System here, the system instance under Windows Event Log Monitoring, go to KM Commands and choose Configure Event Forwarding. What this actually allows us to do is pick up events out of the Windows Event Log and manage them as if they were Patrol events within the Patrol agent. So if I choose to forward filtered Windows events from the system log to the Patrol Event Manager, in this case the Patrol Event Manager is the event management process running within the Patrol agent. Okay? If I choose this, then I'll be picking up only the events that I built the filter for previously. So I'll do that, click OK here, and now our next step is to go actually generate an event in the Windows Event Log. And I will do that by going over to the Manage Node and attempting to start a service that I know the attempted start will fail on. This is going to fail due to a problem in configuration that I have deliberately imposed on this box in order to illustrate these capabilities. So we saw that the service failed there. Let's go back to the Patrol console now. Here in the Patrol console, if we right-click on the Manage node and go to Event Manager and scroll all the way down, or almost all the way down, we have to scroll up a little bit here, we can now see that we have a system-related event here in the Event Manager of the Patrol console. If I double-click on that guy, we actually see the same details embedded within the event that we saw earlier on the annotated data point. And it's basically this information and specifically this event that we want to propagate up. Well, how do we do that? It's very simple. Basically, we have to define another filter rule as we did previously, but in this case, just define it using the Patrol Event Catalog of nt_event log and a Patrol Event class of nt events. So let's go ahead and close this, and we'll go over to PCM, and you'll see that I have one already created here. So if I double click on that guy and expand this out and zoom in a little bit, you can see the actual context here. Again, the catalog we are referring to in this case is nt_event log, and the type of event, or event class as it would be in the Patrol context, is nt events. So we'll go ahead and click OK on that and apply this to the agent. Go ahead and apply that, including the backup. OK. And now if we go back to the Manage node and attempt to restart that same service again, we'll generate the error, and it should propagate all the way up to the BPPM server. So here we are at the agent. We'll attempt to restart that service again, got the same error. And let's go back and look at the BPPM console. Here we have the BPPM console. If we refresh that guy, we now see the event we were looking for. If I double click on it and then expand the summary, we can actually see the details in the message that we want, including the fact that the system could not find the file specified in relation to attempting to start the service. That concludes this video. Thank you for watching the video and thank you for using BMC products.